Good way to start any podcast and any conversation is just to thank the guests, obviously, for coming over. So, Trent, thank you so much for coming over. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course. You're so welcome. I appreciate you having me on as well. It's always fun to meet interesting people and have a chat about space and exploration. So it's a pleasure.
Yes, same here, same here. And time is really good. So we see a lot of things happening in the space industry right now. And obviously, you're working on some great, interesting projects. Obviously, you said you like my background. This is one of the projects that obviously we're going to be talking about that. But one thing that you sent me in the bio before, bridging the gap between traditional aerospace and new age innovation. So can you talk about a little bit what you're currently working on? You kind of talked about that a minute ago. What's happening with you?
Yeah, well, my background has been mostly in like outdoor adventure, recreation, tourism, and kind of connecting scientists with explorers, and that's led to a bunch of really interesting projects. And gosh, a few years ago, that really sparked an idea in me just to, or maybe more so a mission of wanting to spend my life in human exploration, whether that's deep sea or space. So really just humans in extreme environments. And um, like I said, it's led to some fantastic projects. Currently working at the University of Arizona's Biosphere 2 on the old test module, which is your background currently, which is a structure that was built in 1987, kind of as a precursor to the 3.5 acre Biosphere 2. So yeah, I guess I find myself down there. I find myself in all parts of the country and the world just doing different things. And I'm happy to tell you really about all of those. I hope we have enough time.
Obviously. So why is that such an important thing as you continue? Like, there's obviously more information for you guys and girls who wanted to explore more to see what Trent has been working on, and you're going to find that in the website that's in the show notes. Go ahead and you're going to find a section that says projects and just scroll through, and you're going to find all these projects. So I don't know exactly if we will have a time to talk about all of these because there's a lot. But overall, like, why is this such an important thing for us to put ourselves in those positions, just like biosphere or submarines and all of these extreme environments, to do the research and just to spend time as on all that stuff as a human beings?
Yeah, well, I think with all of the technology and everything that we have, the knowledge accessible at our fingertips with the internet and our little pocket computers, uh, I think we forget sometimes how much there is out there that's still waiting to be discovered. And there's a lot of knowledge that's still to be gained. And people like you, your viewers, people out there and discoveries. And so I definitely see the natural curiosity in the world and kids into our adult lives. And there's just an incredible or just new discoveries.
Got you. It just you're breaking up a little bit, Trent, but let me see if we can establish a proper connection. Just give me a second. I don't know if that's coming from me or from you, but we had some interruption.
Let's see here.
It could be me because we're having this crazy storm right now, which obviously we're in a city, but still maybe that's affecting.
Right, yeah.
So give me a
Let me
sec.
just see. Everything on my end looks good.
Yeah, that's me. So sorry about that. Yeah. So so talking about obviously the research and Biosphere too is a very interesting project, and I can't remember exactly the name. I think that's exactly what it's called, Biosphere 2. But there's all this interesting documentary that myself with wife we've been watching this with the popcorn, obviously, and just seeing how these crazy people in a good way. They came up with this idea, to put something like that together and, spend some time in there and do the research. So can you talk about a little bit about this project behind me? What's going to be happening there?
Definitely, yeah, I would be happy to. So right now, we're working on something called SAM. It stands for Space Analog for the Moon and Mars, and it's led by an incredible gentleman, a friend and mentor of mine, Kai Stotz. And Kai, to give you a little bit of a background here, Kai was working at ASU a handful of years ago, and he was developing
Mm,
something called CMOC, which is really a computer model for food resources and like in situ resource utilization
mhm,
for space and directly to habitats, um, where you can input things like how many people you're going to have in a certain space and how much food you would like to bring, or like using different bioregenerative resources, radishes, for example. And it'll tell you, with how many radishes you plant, with the life cycle of those radishes, how that environment will respond. So what the atmospheric composition will be and just other details along those lines. So Kai, I think he was at Biosphere 2 a few years ago, which for those of you who don't know, is a structure that was built in the early 1990s. And there were a group of 8 people that were basically put inside for 2 years to help us try and understand what it would be like to live on another planet, or like such as Mars, or perhaps on the moon, and really diving into the details of those habitats. What do we know about living on those, under those types of situations, or what do we need to uncover or discover, right, and develop operationally, technologically? And they had a bunch of learnings that came out of it, and a bunch of papers were published. And again, this was, I guess, almost 30 years ago now. But Kai was working at the Biosphere 2 doing a barley fodder experiment for his CMOC computer program. And he was on a run and he came across this old test module. And he was thinking, well, what the heck? This thing is sitting here. It's this beautiful building, as you can see behind you there. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Why, what was the purpose of this building, and what's happening with it? What's its future look like? And as Kai kind of dove more into it, he uncovered that we could actually use this for an analog. So again, coming back to the name, space analog for the moon and Mars, the past about 3 years for Kai, but about 6 months for both of us, where we've had boots on the ground. We've been really renovating and reconditioning the old test module. And the last time it was sealed, I believe, was 1989. And after the past half of a year of work, we've completely turned the thing around, renovated it, and actually got it working again as a fully hermetically sealed, now Mars habitat laboratory, basically. So it's very exciting. I would definitely recommend everybody check out the SAM blog and see some of the progress that's happened over time. And our most recent test that we actually just completed was definitely the most exciting. We got the variable volume chamber, which we call the lung, fully inflated after 30 years. So this Hapalon membrane, this rubber, it's a giant diaphragm. It was still in the condition to actually hold air after we patched up some holes, and got the whole system pressurized to about 0.05 psi over ambient, and had 5 of us in there for 4 hours with some bioregenerative, some plants basically going on in there, and as well as our CO2 scrubber that was donated to us from Paragon Space Development Corporation. So we've really integrated a spaceship here on Earth to help us understand how to better live on other planets. And it's just the beginning, and it's very exciting, and it's actually going to be open to a lot of people to come and use, from students, researchers, and even just professionals to come and use as a research space.
mhm. So what type of research, this Biosphere 2 is going to be facilitating? Is it exactly what you talked about just a second ago, or like how, you know, diversified the research can be done? Obviously, the psychological and physiological aspects of, living in a habitat, that type of research. But what else people can do?
Yeah, so I guess something to differentiate too is the Biosphere 2 itself, which is Well, it's operated by the University of Arizona, and there's a bunch of different research that's going on there right now. So inside of the biosphere too, there are different biomes. So there's the ocean biome, the cloud desert biome, the savanna, the rainforest, the mangroves, and each one of those biomes has like a director who's kind of facilitating the science that's going on in each of those sections of the biosphere. The test module here, which is the photo that you see behind you, is specifically for SAM. So again, it's going to be a space analog or a Mars research habitat. And in there, as it's separate from the biosphere too, we're going to be focusing on, again, specifically helping understand how we can live on other planets. So we're looking at mainly like bioregenerative life support systems, so moving from mechanical to that bioregenerative side. So thinking more of, the types of CO2 scrubbers and other machines that keep astronauts alive on the International Space Station, to more like plant-based life cycles to not only provide food for people long-term, but then also to clean the air that we'll be breathing in these habitats when we're staying longer term on other planets. So that's one of the main pillars of SAM. And so there's a handful of underlying science experiments that we're going to hopefully run for longer periods of time. Again, life support being one of them. The biome research of an enclosed habitat. So how does that biome change over time as we have different crews coming through? Something that we see on the International Space Station as people come and go. We want to understand more how that biome changes, that microbiome changes. We're also looking at things like turning Martian regolith or lunar regolith into soil. So figuring out, more directions for that. But when we have all of these different experiments going on over long periods, the goal is to also have people come in and run their own experiments. So whether those are commercial entities, such as, just as an example, like a Lockheed Martin or a Blue Origin or whomever that we're able to have come in, this is a platform open to those types of companies to do long-term habitation type research. But then at the same time, since it is going to be an analog, people like you or I could come in and make teams, propose research projects, whatever our research projects are for, say, our undergraduate degree, graduate degree, or a commercial venture. We can come in for anywhere from 5 to 7 days to 5 to 7 months and run those projects. And what's super fascinating and really exciting about this project is not only is it just going to be the test module itself that is really a greenhouse like you've see behind you, but it's going to have a crew quarters. It's also, we're going to have a Mars yard. And every time that you're ingressing and egressing through the habitat into the Mars yard, we have 2 full pressure suits that will be utilized or used for just those types of operations, EVA operations, tool, haptics, you name it. People can use these as a means to better understand, again, their research project. So if you're testing a new geological hammer or something along those lines, we want to make that as high fidelity as possible for you so you can get the best information for your project. So it's really growing into an ecosystem, I guess, of space research resources for people to use, and hopefully, help our trajectory on other planets and the moon, asteroids, you name it.
Yes. And obviously you probably, come across people who are running other habitats worldwide. You probably know high seas, Lunaris, MDRS, like there is more than a few habitats available. So do people come to you because, Biosphere, I mean, it has a lot of story behind it, obviously, So do people come to you and they ask you for advice? Like, do you do some sort of consulting, or are you planning to do that for the future?
Yeah, I think so. What's really fascinating about all of the, analogs that you just mentioned, it's 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 fun and it's interesting to see the community start to grow, the analog astronaut community and just the space science community. You're talking about high seas. Yeah, we just had Michaela out as well. She came to visit. You mentioned Lunaris. I was actually roommates with Matt H., who is one of the original, helpers and I believe builders or founders of Lunaris back in the day through Project Possum, right? And we see the possum community growing as well, polar suborbital science in the upper mesosphere, and a bunch of people getting this hands-on experience to, either become just analog astronauts or potentially, commissioned astronauts, you name it. So when we look at all of these different types of analogs around the world, I think we're not only seeing an interest, but yeah, we're also seeing a need for, better communication, and an opportunity for that, an opportunity for all of us to come together and have discussions like this, right? And better understand what each of our capabilities are and how we can help each other, because the ultimate goal is, to get out there and explore the solar system and the universe at large. So I do see there being potential for different consulting. I would say that naturally happens as conversations just kind of progress. But we do see ourselves at least as a platform across the board to enable others.
Perfect, perfect. So, and do you see in the future, do you see habitats are going to be kind of this top priority for people as we speak about space industry, space flight is going commercial? Do you think that habitats will play that role into making space flight and those future commercial astronauts when it comes to the training and just preparation, or there will be, are you seeing some other movement happening in industry where those people will be facilitated by the huge companies just like NASA or something like that?
Yeah, let me make sure that I understand your question. I think that the people coming through these habitats. I feel that again, as I mentioned, the analog astronaut community. I feel that a lot of those people are like astronaut hopefuls into the future as we start to see the commercial space, sector growing. I mean, gosh, how many flights are going now? I mean, just for space tourism, right? I know that's not necessarily what we're talking about, but I think Virgin's planning on launching on the 11th, so that's Sunday. Trying to beat, Blue Origin, and so we're seeing all these really exciting opportunities with, Inspiration 4. I believe there's an Axiom mission that's going on. Space for Humanity just came out with something as well. So I see a lot of people kind of moving into these spaces to gain experience they might have only been able to gain through, NASA or ESA or CSA or something along those lines. As we do see it become more accessible, more people want those opportunities. So I see it, yeah, flourishing maybe to support the commercial space industry. But, I think there's also a part of opportunity here where, maybe people like you and I want these hands-on experiences, but also if you become a NASA astronaut or an ESA astronaut or something along those lines, you're also going to gain all of that training through them. So, depending, I think it more so comes down to like what people's individual goals are or community goals. I do see the commercial industry kind of driving, even their own training programs. So let's say that you become an analog astronaut at MDRS. Well, if you end up flying with SpaceX, it's not interchangeable. You're still going to go through the SpaceX training process, right? So I do see that a lot of these organizations are going to have their own, facilitation of what they see as necessary and also what's legally necessary for them to provide.
Yes. So as we speak about the space flight going commercial, just through all these pieces that you see kind of moving in the space industry, how long do you think, we still have to wait before it's going to happen? Like it's going to be commercialized fully?
Well, yeah, I guess it can come down to maybe some semantics around that, like what exactly is commercial, what exactly is new space. I think there's really interesting, concepts and just vocabulary evolves over time and what our understanding of commercial space actually is. I mean, people have paid to go to the International Space Station before. So has it always been commercial? It's maybe just not been accessible because of the cost, or, how does that play just into the conversation? I'm not sure, but maybe a better answer for you would be, with Virgin Galactic going next week, and I believe Blue Origin this month, and you have Inspiration 4 later this fall. I mean, I think this year, 2021 is probably the year where we're going to start to see a lot of these commercial opportunities. Space Perspective, that's another operator that I didn't get to mention yet. That's an organization founded by Tabor McCallum and Jane Pointer, who were actually two original Biospherians, believe it or not, and they're down in Florida, and they are doing some really neat work with high altitude balloons. So imagine a 6-hour flight, via a skyhook balloon to altitudes between 100 and 150,000 feet. So granted, you're about, 50% of the way to the Kármán line, but still an incredible experience. Curvature of the Earth, blackness of space, so thin blue atmosphere. I think those types of platforms will not only be good for tourism as we see commercial space, but also think of stratospheric laboratories, labs up that high, which would be really, really fascinating.
Yes. And taking the next step further, kind of, as we speak about taking things commercial, and obviously that's, we have to probably properly frame the question, and that's on my end. How do you ask the question? But what about taking things even one step further? And we're talking about creating colonies on Mars or the moon, coming back with the Artemis mission. And now we have obviously SpaceX and Elon Musk's plans going to Mars. Like, how big is the problem as we talk about, the biosphere and the rest of the habitats on a global scale? And obviously everybody works on the research, but the psychological aspects and the, physiological aspects, there's a lot of research going to that. And obviously you're probably seeing that through the conversations or just personal experience. So how big of an obstacle the psychological aspects are going to be for us if we're thinking about living on Moon and Mars in the future?
I think the impacts and the processes here that we're trying, like these hurdles that we're trying to overcome, are huge. I don't think we can downplay that at all. It's not just going to be hopping on a spaceship and flying to Mars and everybody's happy and cheery. Like it's going to be a long, arduous process, I think. And what's exciting for us now is that I think the process isn't getting started. I just think it's more catalyzed, and it's kind of burning faster now during our lifetimes. And I think we're going to see huge advances. Let's even call it from now to the next 10 years. But I think that there are going to be a lot of difficult learnings, right? So whether it's just academic or whether it's put into the experiential realm. I mean, gosh, I think Elon Musk talks about that, right? He says, yeah, we're trying to go to Mars. Are people going to get hurt? Yeah, probably. Things are going to happen that we're not going to be able to foresee, but it kind of comes with the territory. And I think that's always been true for human exploration, right? Going out and not knowing what's over the horizon, and you can prepare the best that you can, but until you're actually there, you in some way have to trust your abilities and trust your preparation process to hopefully, enjoy successful outcomes. But that's not always the case. So for me personally, just as far as my opinion goes, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of advances. I think it's going to take a long time, probably 50, 100 years, maybe a couple lifetimes for us to fully get to these places and establish settlements there, whether that's the moon or Mars. But I think within our lifetime, we'll definitely see some of those initial baby steps that will be really exciting.
So obviously, yeah, things do take time. And for me, at least personally, when I look at any project, for me, it's how do you compress the timelines? How do you make things faster? So maybe you can give us an advice that's, easy to apply. If it's, we're talking about increasing the numbers, and obviously people who are more aware about space and what's happening in the space, that's, related to obviously education and, just communicating science to the people. But what about the physical and psychological aspects? Is there something that we can implement on our daily basis, just kind of meditation, yoga, anything that could help us to put in this kind of mind frame and prepare us psychologically better for this, inevitable future?
So are you thinking more along the lines of people who actually want to go, say, to like the moon or Mars?
Yes.
Oh, definitely. I mean, being in, peak physical shape is something that, I mean, we should all be doing generally, but especially for, getting out into space and, experiencing zero gravity for long, extended periods of time. But I think what's difficult in answering that question, is that we don't fully know right now, like what the means of transportation or habitation are going to fully look like. And so we don't I mean, as far as I'm aware, so we don't fully know, necessarily how we can respond or prepare for those. So I guess if you can't fully define those things, like let's say the spacecraft that's taking you to Mars, is it going to have artificial gravity, or are you going to be experiencing weightless for a majority of those periods? Like
Mm.
those two kind of extreme situations are going to really define separately what you're going to have to do to maintain your physicality and your mental well-being during those time frames. So um, I think that since you don't know the answer, or what the crafts are going to look like, or what the suits are going to look like, and how well they're going to respond to your body, probably going to the extreme and saying, be as in best physical shape as you can. Get out there, be doing yoga, lift weights. There are probably going to be limitations on things like, potentially like height or size to fit in certain areas of a capsule, or um, even a seat if you're a pilot, for example. So
Mm.
keeping like maybe some of those standards in your head about what the capabilities are, right? How big are these suits, or how small are these suits, or you know uh, absorbing that information, and then just doing your best with that. So again, like you said, yoga, I would stick there. I'd be running, I'd be lifting weights to stay in shape, and then getting out there, meditating, taking care of your mental well-being. um, I think that that's going to be the best thing that you could do to get ready for something like this. But again, it's something we should probably all be doing.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So talk about the suits. Obviously, next generation of accessible pressure suits and life support systems. You're developing those with Smith Aerospace Garments, and obviously that website link is going to be in the show notes as well. So can you talk about, first of all, how you came up with this idea? I kind of have a clue, probably through scuba diving and things like that. There's a lot of experience. Some of the people that I talked about that I know they're developing next generation spacesuits, they talked about studying, medieval ages, armory,
Mhm.
those type of things. So how do you came up with that idea, and what you're currently working with it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, these ideas are from people who I would consider, friends, mentors, colleagues. Smith Aerospace Garments was started by Dr. Cameron Smith out of Portland State University, and he's the one, like you mentioned, has been studying, all suits of armor and different types of convolution for movement. Um, he's been doing that now for, I believe, 12 years. And his project was very specific towards wanting to enable like high altitude balloon flights. He came from he still, his background is of course focused in exploration. And I think that him and I really connected because uh, we had some of those similar values of human exploration and wanting to push the limit. And when you look at some older spacesuits, you look at like Wiley Post, for example, or just pressure suits. If they could do that back, in the mid 1900s, why would we not be able to do those types of things now? And it's actually really neat to see. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Final Frontier Designs and like Nikolai Moiseev and
Mhm.
Ted Southern. They're doing some incredible work with Final Frontier Designs. I really, looking at those guys, it's super inspirational to see. Nick has had, I think, somewhere like 30 some odd years in pressure suit design over in Russia, and has come over here, and they won the astronaut glove challenge. And I've gotten to hang out with them. They're actually the suits that are used for Project Possum as well, and they're IVA suits. But you know, Nick, when he got to the US, I believe, I've seen some of his old pictures of like him building a suit in his house. And I just thought that was so neat. I was so inspired by that, seeing somebody with such expertise and then being able to do that in a manner that, was transforming his kitchen table or what have you into a facility that was capable of doing that. And so I see that same kind of inspiration with Cameron. Cameron took a lot of these, all of this technical information and learned throughout the years, and through trial and error has now created like really functional suits. And so when we're looking at suits now, I think, gosh, we're looking at millions of dollars, right, for an EMU suit. And I know that there are some organizations that are trying to bring those costs down. I think my focus has more been an interest of like the analog astronaut world. And the reason I think I've come to that conclusion is, you look at high seas, you look at MDRS, you look at Lunares or Habitat Martes and down in South America. You look at all of these different places, and they want to be as high fidelity as possible. They want to put people in situations that are going to give them as close to the real life experience as they can, because that's where your best research is going to come out of, right? That type of data collection. And I think spacesuits are something that we can make analog options for. So would they be flight ready options? Probably not. You're not going to want to, build a spacesuit for $10,000 and probably fly that one to high altitudes or to vacuum situations. But to put people in a suit that is pressurizable to 4 psi over ambient pressure, that is going to give everybody such just a vastly different experience than wearing a motorcycle helmet and snow gloves, right? So when we're talking about next generation, that's where I see there being some huge advances, or just really impactful opportunities for people to gain these valuable experiences with those types of systems.
Yes.
And so that's what I think is, great about SAM and what we're doing at Biosphere too, is that when you're staying at the test module and in the crew quarters, and now you want to go test out the haptics of, some new interface that you designed in the Mars yard, we're going to have you put on a full pressure suit, and you're going to pressurize to, again, let's call it 4 psi over ambient. And when you get out there, you're actually going to have life support that's going to only give you a limited amount of time of, breathable air.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot more difficult to move, and your fingers are not going to have that tactility that you normally do. So hopefully by adding those opportunities for people, researchers, students, scientists, everybody in between, hopefully that will then get people to think more about how we can tackle some of these realistic problems that we're going to be encountering.
Exactly. I do agree with that fully, because we already have the more than a few habitats available worldwide, and obviously behind me, the biosphere, but we need to take the next step further, which is making things a little bit more realistic. As we talk about, just putting, kind of suit on and just putting the, motorcycle helmet on and the gloves. I mean, that's not, it works. It looks good maybe in a social media post, but that's not realistic. And that's not, at the end of the day, I do understand people do come in, they do their own research that they want to do inside the habitat, which is fine, but the EVA is a big part of space travel, and we're going to be doing a lot of those, spending a lot of time on Moon and Mars doing EVAs. So that's very important. So, just coming back to the point for the future analog missions and people participating, like what people should expect, just like how the daily routine looks like, so people can get more understanding of, is that for me, or this is totally something that will be really uncomfortable of doing?
All right, so are you thinking specifically for SAM?
Yes.
Yeah, so gosh, our habitat right now, again, is we're trying to make it as high fidelity as possible. So it's a fully, it will be in the future a fully sealed system. Right now, for our first test, it was sealed. There's everything that's sealed has a little bit of a leak rate, of course, even the International Space Station. But again, I think the goal being we want to make it as realistic as possible. So when crews first want to come to SAM, what they'll do is they'll put together a proposal and send it over to us. And you can do so through our website even now. And we'll either approve or deny those research proposals. We'll take teams anywhere from about, I believe, 1 to about 10, or maybe even a little more. But really, there's just going to be 4 people, or up to 4 people, in the habitat at any point in time. So
can I ask you a question? Just sorry for interrupting. Any reason that you're choosing crew number 4?
Yeah, so the habitat itself really just we have room for about 4, and our scrubbing system for
Okay.
our mechanical scrubbing system right now to really clean that air that's going to be inside is made for, on average, about that many people, plus or minus a few for some safety margins. But uh, we'll have 4 beds basically within the crew quarters. So it will be limited to 4 people inside, and then we'll have a mission control, of course, and then that mission control, you'll hopefully have at least 1 person, and then maybe more depending on your mission and your objectives and the experience people are trying to gain. So you could have a mission control of 6 people or 10 people, or maybe you have a much larger team, or maybe you want to cycle people through over a longer period of time, maybe over the course of a month. Some people will start in mission control, and then you'll swap out, every 7 days for people going through the habitat. So when people first arrive, though, what we're going to see is on property, it's actually really wonderful. There's a full casita village. So the casitas are just like these apartment style houses. It's like a little town almost. And so you'll arrive, you'll go, and you get to stay in some of these casitas, and then we'll move into our training process. So of course we have to teach you how to use the spacesuits. And we're working on different certification processes, let's say with different organizations like the FAA, to make those like FAA approved processes. So trying to, again, bring that real life hands-on experience that's going to benefit people coming through this project, as well as, not just the education, but, things like certification that could be beneficial professionally. So we'll get people in the spacesuits, we'll teach them about the habitat, we'll answer all of their questions, and really get them ready to spend a period where they're not completely isolated, but fully separate from this atmosphere that you and I are breathing right now for however long. So once they come through, we'll then cycle them, get the first cruise in there, again, up to 4 people, with a minimum, again, of about 5 to 7 days, because the first day or two, we need to get people situated, we need to get everyone trained up, and then get them finally into the habitat. And then once they're there, you can have a minimum of about 3 days inside, because you're going to definitely need to get used to some of those operations. So there may be tending to plants that'll have to be done. There'll maybe be some general operations procedures that need to be upkept. But then you'll obviously have scheduled time to work on your own projects, and spend time with each other as a crew, and work towards your objectives. So moving through that process, I think we'll see a lot of people staying for longer than just that minimum 5 to 7 days, probably closer to like a 2-week mark. But again, we want to provide that flexibility for crews. And again, think of SAM as a platform of opportunity and of enablement, right? To get you in these types of experiences, to gain that knowledge, gain those certifications, but then also contribute to science just on a greater level. And we see that, we see that with Lunaris and with High Seas and MDRS and plenty of others. But think about being completely like I was going to say it maybe in a submarine. Think about being sealed in a submarine where you can't necessarily get out. There are going to be some of those aspects to this. We're treating this as a real spaceship. I mean, it is sealed. It does have a separate atmosphere that's pressurized over the external atmosphere. So when you're inside, you can't just open the door and walk out. Granted, there will be emergency procedures, of course, if that is necessary. But as far as maintaining sim, it's going to be probably one of the highest fidelity simulations that you'll be able to find currently on the planet.
I love it. I love the idea, because for me, it's definitely making things more realistic. And that's what I see the problem with the current habitats. Obviously, as I said, the research is fine. That aspect is fine. We need that. But just making things realistic. And I can't wait to see people coming in doing the research, just, facilities being operational, basically. But there's another problem that I'm facing, and maybe I would love to get some of your thoughts as well, is we talk about the crew dynamics, especially because of the NASA research. Obviously, a long time ago, they kind of took the number of people as 8 for the crew dynamics, especially when it's taking, a space flight, like it's the number 8 most of the time. And that's what the habitats have. But when we talk about the scenarios of colonizing Mars, I don't like the word, I'm not a big fan of that, but just occupying Mars, we're going to be living in those confined areas, again, with the group of people that is going to be more than 8. We're talking about 20, 30, 40, maybe
Hmm.
more potentially.
Right.
So do you believe that we should do research again with larger groups of people and for longer periods of time than just 2 weeks in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, any information that we're able to garner off of, our gaps in knowledge are going to be beneficial to us, right? So, I'm not actually completely aware of if there have been any studies like that. Maybe you can shine some light on that for me. But um, those sound, like larger statistical models, right? Like
Mm,
where we take a census and then we can kind of project those numbers onto a greater population. So I think there are going to be hurdles to do those types of studies, especially, when it comes to like funding, right? Funding
mm,
is a huge thing for everybody
yeah.
across industries to find money to do these types of things. And now when you're talking about taking, let's call it, yeah, 40 people and you're trying to do a long-term study in a facility, well, we have to have a facility that can, house
Yeah.
all of those people and that you can, work with those people, provide them a stipend or whatever you have to do to be successful in that study. I think that sounds like a really big project, and I think it would be beneficial to understand. But we may still be years away from that. And so if somebody is able and interested to do that research, for their undergrad, or sorry, for their graduate degree or a PhD or something, then by all means, I definitely think it could only be beneficial. But at the same time, I think we're still taking baby steps to where we need to even understand how are we going to make sure that 4 or 8 people can breathe and eat
Yes.
on Mars. So I think we're still, because we're in those smaller stages, that type of research I believe will probably come naturally over time.
Yes, I do agree. I do agree. What about diving deep? Again, with this underwater neutral buoyancy education programs that you have, can you talk about that and how people can participate in those?
Yeah, so neutral buoyancy is really interesting, right? A lot of people are also fascinated with zero gravity, of course, and water gives us an environment to where we can somewhat experience that by making
Mhm.
ourselves neutrally buoyant. And we see, astronauts training for that here in the U.S. at JSC. The Russians have a deep pool as well. And actually, I just seen something really fascinating in Dubai. Dubai has, I believe, the deepest pool in the world right now, about 200 feet. So
Oh, wow.
what's that, like 60 meters or something? But incredibly deep pool. So I think we're going to see a lot of opportunities for people to get in the water. I don't know how many of your viewers are scuba divers, but if you are, then you've experienced, some of this
Mm,
neutral buoyancy before. But what we wanted to do, and what some programs have done in the past, is integrate neutral buoyancy into training, and then specifically
mm,
to like astronaut style training for people just within our communities. And I started working on this program called Dive into Space in California with a gentleman, Russ Billings, who was uh, a teacher back in the day who was trying to be an astronaut candidate and got pretty close. Russ started this neutral buoyancy program through his high school, and that extended. We were working with Fresno State University in California, which was a NASA-funded education program, and we did this really neat work with high school students, getting them in the water, teaching them to scuba dive, and then having them run simulated missions in this space structure with all of these different nodes. I believe there were 3 different nodes as a part of the structure, and maybe about 4 or 5 missions in each node. And it truly gave you this experience of what it would have been like, or what it would be like now to train as an astronaut in underwater simulation. So taking those experiences and capabilities, and now trying to bring them to SAM also, we have a small pool that we're going to use for probably like spacewalk style EVAs initially. So if you are scuba certified in the future, you'll be able to come down, and
mm,
our goal with our pressure suits is to have underwater options as well. We will
mm,
have a couple safety divers, and we'll get you in the water doing some operational EVA, be weighted properly, and get to experience not only um, neutral buoyancy, but also neutral buoyancy within a spacesuit. Again, a vastly different experience than just being in
mhm.
the water in, say, a wetsuit like a scuba diver.
Yes.
So you're going to get these different layers of experience that could potentially leads to your future career path, or just develop skills, that could help us as humanity into the future. I mean, I like to think about sometimes all of these really exciting projects are happening, these different space stations. I believe China's looking at building a space station. You have Axiom that's looking at, I believe, either taking over the International Space Station or doing some of their own, or, if Blue Origin is also interested in doing different space things. I believe Jeff Bezos, when he was younger, said that he wanted to build like space hotels or something. And I mean, when you think about it, who's going to build all of these things? We're going to need a labor force in space that is also going to have to have the skill sets to build these things. So I think more of astronauts as, jack of all trades right now. You've got your pilots, your educators, your researchers, scientists. They're also mechanics and firefighters. They're doing all of the jobs. Yes. But as we start to grow our presence in space and the settlement of the moon and Mars, I think we're going to start to see a division of labor again. We're going to start to see people, as the same way we have commercial divers here on Earth to weld, oil pipelines or lay fiber optic cables or what have you. We're going to start to see that in space. We're going to start to see a workforce in space that is going to specialize in, building and constructing habitats, or, firefighting. Space firefighting companies, something along. You can kind of see where my head's going there. Yes. There's just going to be a lot of opportunity. So again, if we can provide people, let's say you're a welder and you want to work in space, well, come to SAM and we can get you in the water and give you experience in neutral buoyancy pressure suit operations. And we can come up with kind of an orbital EVA welding opportunity for you potentially, and get you that type of experience, because then maybe that person is going to be the one who starts one of these companies in the future, right, with that experience. So it's really exciting with the neutral buoyancy facility that we'll have, and hopefully that will grow into a larger one, but that's probably going to come into being in 2022.
Yes, and that's really brilliant, because I love, again, where space industry is, because we see all of these, things that being kind of privately held by, obviously, by the government and through the government agencies. Now are these projects, again, obviously getting developed smaller, just like neutral buoyancy, pools we're talking about, but still these things are being done. Reusable rockets, obviously, and other things, like university students can launch satellites now in space. And it's been going for, yes. Well, obviously that becomes a problem at some point, but look, it's really great to see that getting commercialized, that aspect as well. As one of the previous podcast guests said, that the future to be an astronaut, it will be equal as you currently being a truck driver, which is great. Like, it sounds funny, but it will be a great future to have. That means we have so many astronauts available that would be just a regular kind of job. And that's exactly what we're aiming for. So again, like, through this momentum that I'm seeing to just getting built up, do you see how we can, again, coming back to the point that I said, just squeeze the time frames, make things to go faster? Do you see anything that we can kind of speed up the process just overall in the space industry that could help us to kind of propel this future faster?
Yeah, I think that maybe the best answer that I could give for you on that one is to have people get involved. I think a lot of people look at space and they're not really sure how to, become a part of the community, or maybe their background isn't in anything technical. Maybe they're not an engineer or a scientist, but maybe they work in human resources or something. Well, all types of jobs are going to be needed, and positions are going to be needed as the commercial space arena continues to develop. And so I think if people can just even ask themselves, what am I doing in my life now? How do I want to get involved into space? And then really, having a growth mindset around, well, okay, what if I, got into this somehow, or maybe I tried this new, part of my career and I really focused on commercial space, or maybe helping with astronaut selection for commercial companies. There are jobs, I think, that are going to be out there that don't exist right now. And in a way, yes, it's going to be up to those companies to create those positions. But I also feel that, people like you and I and your listeners, by asking different questions about, well, what's needed and how can I, fill those gaps either in knowledge or in support or with my skill set, I think that's going to continue to grow the industry and keep pushing people to think about it more. And then that's probably going to lead to more opportunities and probably more space companies, right? And more space hotels and more settlements on the moon, or, I mean, you name it. I think that by simply asking those questions and figuring out how you can get involved and being inspired enough to put boots on the ground to actually get involved is going to help us get there probably a lot faster.
Exactly, exactly. And it's all about taking the first step. As you know, I talk with many, obviously, people here on the podcast and have a lot of private conversations. And when I, ask them, what advice would you give for younger people? Look, the first step that you're going to take, it's not going to be the last one, because you're going to find yourself, and obviously probably you did, and I did definitely myself, like the first step that you took and you thought, this is going to be it, this is going to be my thing.
Mm-hmm.
You ended up in a completely different place 5 years later, just because life happens, and everything happens obviously for a reason. You need to have a proper plan, but sometimes you're just going to end up at the place that's the best for you because of the things that you do, and it just naturally happens. But you need to take the first step, because I spoke with the NASA engineers, and those people, sometimes they come in NASA because it's a huge facility. There's a lot of different things that you can work on, and they're looking for these people. And sometimes these people come in as engineers, and then they end up working on creating clean rooms or something like that. So you're going to find what's the best for you, but you just need to take that first step. If that's listening to the podcast or getting in contact with yourself, and asking questions. How do I do that? Where do I start? What's the book? What's the,
Right.
movie or something, right? Because we need to speed this process up. So talking again about yourself, the question that's, a lot of people, like, they get confused when I ask them that question, and that's why I like to ask it, is like, how do you imagine your personal future? Again, all these beautiful projects that you're working on, you have a great list of those also on the website. Like, how do you envision your personal legacy is going to look like in the future?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would actually be curious to hear what your different guests have said, and even as far as like their generational inclination, I guess. I'm in my 20s, and so I feel that there's a lot of time for projects, and
Yes.
to be impactful throughout. I mean, there's a lifetime of projects out there, right, and possibilities. But I do find it interesting because I've heard a lot of people talk about that lately, like their legacy and what they're trying to leave behind. And I mean, personally, I'm just trying to work on really interesting things with interesting people and to have an impact. And I think that, from other people our age that I talk to, they feel fairly similar, is that, they just like our generation wants to just contribute in a meaningful way to something that's, maybe just bigger than ourselves. I think that that's where at least my future will take me, and I hope to continue to meet people like yourself and others out there that are doing interesting things and really making the world a better place, or off world a better place, I guess. But it, I feel so fortunate to live where I get to live and to get to work with the people that I get to work with. And I just hope that that continues. So, whether through SAM or, we just put together another expedition that we're taking off on next week. I was telling you a little bit about a deep sea submersible research trip. So we're going to go try and understand more about the migratory patterns of six-gill sharks. So we're going to be tagging them at, about 600, I'm thinking here, 500 meters below the surface. So, there's so, I said this at the beginning of our talk, that there's still so much out there to be discovered, and we all provide value, and we can come into something. I mean, if you take even my just personal experience, I started in as an expedition guide when I was 18 years old. I was leading rock climbing trips and river rafting trips and caving and, you name it. And that, I guess, lust for exploration and interest in discovery just led me to ask certain questions and then want to work on projects and then just started doing it, right? So I just want to continue doing that. And I think that we're going to start to see even more people get out there and do really fun and impactful things. And I just want to be a part of that. And I just want to,
Yes.
enjoy the little bit of time that I have here on this little rock in the middle of the far corner of the Milky Way galaxy, and just have a good time.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's what it's all about. Awesome. Look, so I really appreciate you coming on, Trent. I mean, we obviously we just scratched the surface with all the projects that you're working on, and hopefully we can do part two sometime in the future to go more in depth about the things that you're going to be working on in the future, because I'm sure you're going to have plenty of those. Look, as you said, I do understand the question. It's not the right time to ask that just because where you are in the life cycle. But I love your personal thoughts and ideas of what you want to do to create an impact, to leave something bigger than yourself, which is really great. We need more people with this type of vision on this planet for sure, and it will be less easier for everybody to live and breathe. So again, thank you for everything that you do, guys and girls. Make sure to go and follow Trent, get in contact with them. You're gonna find Instagram link. And maybe I can fetch something else also to include there, so you can have a offline conversation with them. Again, ask the questions about personal career. Again, obviously, Biosphere 2, how you can be part of that. There's a link for that too, so go and check it out. Pre-register, because I need to go and check it out myself now. I'm very curious to see more. And yeah, and do that. So again, Trent, thanks for coming over. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. It's been fantastic, and I hope to be back in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. So, okay, guys, appreciate you watching or listening to this episode, and I'll talk to you and see you very soon. Thanks again.